I came to Harbor City with one duffel bag, two cracked phone screens, and a plan that sounded better in my head than it did out loud. After 8 years working construction and teaching weekend climbing courses, my body had started sending warnings I could no longer ignore. Bad knees, bad sleep, bad temper. I was 30, not dead, but some mornings I woke up feeling like life had already used the best parts of me and left the rest to keep showing up. So I left. No dramatic goodbye. No broken heart. No one chasing me to the bus station. I simply handed in my notice, sold what I could, and took a seasonal job repairing equipment for an outdoor company near the waterfront. Harbor City was loud, crowded, and always moving. Ferries groaned in the distance. Food carts smoked on every corner. Tourists walked too slowly. Locals walked like they were late for war, and nobody cared who I had been before I arrived. That was exactly what I needed. My name is Bill Walker, and that night, all I wanted was a cheap dinner and a walk home. The trouble started near Pier Market, where the evening crowd packed itself between souvenir stalls, seafood counters, and street performers playing for tips. I had just bought a paper bag of fried shrimp when a woman screamed behind me. At first, everyone turned the way people always do, curious but not ready to get involved. Then I saw the man sprinting through the crowd with a leather purse tucked under his arm. A second guy ran a few steps behind him, shoving anyone who got too close. I did not think. That was usually my problem. The first thief slammed into my shoulder hard enough to knock the shrimp from my hand. I caught his jacket by the collar and drove him sideways into a stack of plastic crates. He cursed, twisted, and swung at me. His fist clipped my jaw. Pain flashed white behind my eyes, and my temper snapped. I locked one arm around him and dragged him down before he could run again. The second guy came back for his friend, and suddenly I was in the middle of a fight I had never volunteered for. Somebody yelled for security. Somebody else recorded on their phone, because apparently that was what people did now instead of helping. The thief under me kicked like a trapped animal. I took an elbow to the ribs, lost my grip, and shoved him hard against a shuttered kiosk. He hit the metal with a bang. The crowd gasped like I had started the whole thing. Then a voice cut through the chaos. "Police! Step back." I turned just as a man in a dark patrol uniform moved through the crowd with the kind of calm that made people obey before they understood why. He was tall, broad across the chest, with short dark hair and a face built out of hard lines. Not pretty. Too stern for that. But striking in a way that made the noise around him seem to thin. His eyes landed on me, then on the thief bent over near the kiosk, then on my hand still fisted in the man's jacket. "Let him go," the officer said. "He stole that woman's purse." I snapped. I said, "Let him go." The thief chose that moment to fall to one knee and groan like I had nearly killed him. I stared at him in disbelief. "You have got to be kidding me." The officer moved fast. 1 second, he was 3 steps away. The next, he had my wrist turned behind my back and my chest pressed against the glass wall of a closed ticket booth. It was not brutal, but it was firm enough to tell me arguing would not improve my evening. "Hands where I can see them," he said near my ear. "They're literally behind my back, because you put them there. Do not make me repeat myself." I shut my mouth, mostly because my cheek was against cold glass and my pride had already taken enough damage. The crowd murmured behind us. Phones were still up. Great. My first month in the city, and I was already becoming someone's viral clip with a stupid caption. The officer's hand moved over my shoulder, down my arm, then across my side in a quick practice search. "Any weapons on you?" "No." "Anything sharp?" "Only my personality, apparently." His hand paused for half a second. "Funny. I try." He continued the pat down, professional and controlled, but when his palm checked the inside of my jacket and slid along my lower waist, both of us went still. It was an accidental touch, quick, part of the search, nothing more than procedure. It should have meant nothing, but my breath caught anyway. His hand lifted at once, yet the heat of it stayed there like a mark. I turned my head slightly, enough to look at him from the corner of my eye. He was close, too close. I could see the tension in his jaw, the tiny shift in his expression before he locked it away. For a strange second, the market disappeared. No shouting, no cameras, no stolen purse. just his eyes on mine, sharp and unsettled, like he had felt the same thing and hated that he had. Then the moment broke. "Officer Sullivan," a security guard called out. We checked the camera. The big guy stopped the runner. "He's not with them." The officer's grip loosened. The thief immediately tried to crawl away. I looked at him. "You might want to grab the actual criminal." Officer Sullivan did not answer, but the look he gave the thief could have frozen the harbor. Within seconds, the man was cuffed. The second thief had already vanished into the market, though two security guards were chasing after him with more enthusiasm than speed. Only then did the officer turn back to me. He looked less certain now, though he hid it well. "Turn around. I'm not going to get slammed into the glass again, am I? Not unless you miss it." I blinked. There it was. Dry as dust, barely noticeable, but definitely humor. It caught me off guard enough that I turned without another argument. He removed the cuffs from one wrist, then the other. His fingers brushed my skin as the metal came away. I hated that I noticed. I hated even more that he noticed me noticing. "Bill Walker," I said, rubbing my wrist. "Since you searched me like we were old friends, you might as well know the name." His gaze flicked up. "Frank Sullivan. Officer Sirius has a real name." "Good to know. I just arrested the man who hit you. You also pinned the wrong one to a wall." His mouth tightened. "You were holding him by the collar in the middle of a public disturbance. He stole a purse. And you escalated. I stopped him. You threw him into a kiosk. He ran into my sense of civic duty. For a second, I thought he might actually smile. He did not, but something in his eyes changed, a brief crack in all that discipline. It made him look younger. Not soft exactly, just human. The woman who had been robbed came over shaking, clutching her recovered purse. "Thank you," she told me. "He would have gotten away." Frank heard that. I could tell by the way his shoulders shifted, almost invisible, but there. He looked at me again. "You need medical attention?" "No." "You are bleeding." I touched my jaw and found a smear of red on my fingers. I've had worse from cabinet doors. That explains a lot. This time I laughed before I could stop myself. It was quick, rough, and badly timed, but it loosened something in my chest. Frank looked away first. A younger officer came up beside him with a tablet. "Captain, the second suspect got through the south exit. Security is pulling footage now." "Captain?" "Of course. Not just a patrol officer." That made the whole wall incident even better. Frank nodded. "Get statements from everyone who saw the grab. Start with the victim." Then he turned back to me. "I need your statement too. I was heading home. It will take 10 minutes. That sounds like police math. It will take 15 if you keep talking." I should have been annoyed. I was annoyed. But beneath it sat something far more inconvenient. Curiosity. The kind that gets men into trouble when they are old enough to know better. I gave my statement near the ticket booth while the market slowly returned to normal around us. Frank asked direct questions and wrote down direct answers. He did not flirt. He did not soften. Still, every time his eyes lifted from the page, I felt that same pull from the wall. Controlled. Unwelcome. Impossible to ignore. When we finished, he handed my ID back. "Try calling the police next time," he said. "Try not arresting the helpful guy next time." "I did not arrest you. You introduced me to the glass pretty intimately." His eyes dropped to my mouth for less than a second, so quick I might have imagined it. Then he stepped back. "Go home, Bill." The way he said my name should not have stayed with me, but it did. I walked 3 blocks before realizing my jacket felt too light. I stopped under a street lamp, checked every pocket, then checked again with growing irritation. My wallet was gone. ID, cash, bank card, building key card, everything. I looked back toward the glowing chaos of Pier Market and muttered a word my mother would have hated. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, already tired. "Hello." A familiar voice came through, low and controlled. "Bill Walker." My stomach tightened. "Captain Sullivan." A brief pause. "We found something that belongs to you." "My wallet?" "Yes." Relief hit first. Suspicion followed right behind it. "Where?" Another pause, heavier this time. "On the second suspect." I looked back toward the market, where police lights still flashed blue against the glass. Frank's voice dropped slightly. You may have seen more than you realize tonight. I need you to come back. I should have said no. I should have told him to mail it, toss it, keep the cash as an apology for the wall. Instead, I turned around. Because trouble had already found me. And because some part of me, the stupidest part, wanted to see Frank Sullivan again. I turned back toward Pier Market with the feeling of a man walking into trouble while pretending he still had a choice. The police lights had stopped flashing by the time I returned, but the area still carried that aftertaste of chaos. Security guards were arguing near the south exit. A few tourists lingered behind barricade tape, hungry for one more piece of drama. Frank Sullivan stood beside a patrol car, my wallet in one hand, his other hand resting on his belt like he had been carved into that posture. When he saw me, his expression did not change. That irritated me more than it should have. You said you found on the second suspect, I said. We did. Then why do you look like I stole it from myself? His eyes narrowed slightly. Because your ID was removed, your cash was untouched, and one of the cards inside had a mark on it. I frowned. A mark? Frank opened the wallet and showed me my building key card. Someone had scratched a small triangle into the plastic near the corner. That mean anything to you? He asked. No. Should it? It matches a symbol we have seen in 3 other theft cases near the waterfront. That killed my sarcasm for about 2 seconds. So I was not just robbed. I was tagged. Possibly. I hate when cops say possibly. It always means yes, but with paperwork. This time, Frank's mouth moved like he wanted to fight a smile and won by force. Come with me. I need you to look at footage. Do I get my wallet back? After. Very romantic, Captain. He gave me a flat look. Get in the car, Bill. The way he said my name should not have worked on me twice. It did anyway. The station was only a few blocks from the pier, tucked between a municipal parking deck and a 24-hour pharmacy. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee, printer toner, and people pretending they were not exhausted. Frank led me past a front desk where a young officer looked up, saw me, then looked at Frank with interest so obvious it should have been illegal. Captain, the officer said, is this the guy from the wall? I stopped walking. The guy from the wall? Frank did not slow down. Evidence room. Now. The officer grinned at me as I passed. Nice to meet you, wall guy. I have a name, I said. Not anymore, he called back. Frank opened a door before I could answer and guided me into a small review room with 2 monitors and a metal table. The moment the door shut, the air changed. No crowd, no market noise, just the hum of electronics and the quiet awareness that we were alone again. He kept a careful distance this time. That annoyed me too. Sit, he said. Is that a request or another wall-related suggestion? Chair, Bill. I sat because my feet hurt, not because he told me to. Frank loaded security footage from the market. The first clip showed the woman losing her purse. The second showed me catching the thief, which was satisfying until I saw how violent it looked from a bad angle. I winced when my hand drove the man against the kiosk. Frank noticed. Still think you did nothing wrong? I think I helped badly. That is closer to the truth. You ever say thank you like a normal person? Rarely. At least you know your flaws. He switched to another camera. This one showed the second suspect cutting across the south exit. He was lean, hood up, moving with calm purpose instead of panic. Just before he disappeared, he looked straight into the camera. Frank paused the image. Recognize him? I leaned closer. The face was partly hidden, but the jaw, the scar near the eyebrow, the pale eyes, I had seen him. My stomach tightened. He was standing near the food stall before the grab. I thought he was waiting for someone. Frank studied me instead of the screen. Did he see you notice him? I thought back. The crowd. The scream. The man turning his head. That brief cold glance before everything exploded. Yeah, I said. He did. Frank's shoulders set. I did not like that. He looked like a man solving a problem he wished had stayed smaller. What? I asked. The last witness who noticed that Mark had his apartment broken into 2 nights later. The room felt smaller. You could have opened with that. I wanted to be sure. And now I am not. That was meant to be careful. It landed like a threat. I stood. Give me my wallet. I will file whatever report you need tomorrow. Frank stepped in front of the door, not touching me, not blocking me completely, but close enough to make the point. Bill. No. I know that tone. That is the tone men use before they start making decisions for me. His face tightened. I'm trying to keep you alive. And I'm trying not to become your problem. You already are. The words came out rougher than either of us expected. Silence dropped hard between us. Frank looked away first, jaw working. That came out wrong. Did it? Yes. I should have left. Instead, I stayed because beneath the command in his voice there had been something else. Worry. Not professional concern. Not just casework. Something sharper. The door opened behind him, and the young officer from the desk stuck his head in. Captain, do you want me to set up protective detail for your boyfriend, or... Frank turned so fast the officer nearly swallowed his own tongue. Ow! The door closed. I stared at Frank. He stared at the floor. Then I laughed. I tried not to, but it came out anyway, low and unwilling. Your boyfriend? I said. Frank rubbed one hand over his face. He is new. He seems observant. He is annoying. He has taste. Frank looked up at that. The room warmed by several degrees. I cleared my throat and regretted every word I had ever spoken. Forget I said that. I will try. You will fail. Probably. For a moment, the danger outside the room stepped back. It was just us standing too close, both pretending the joke had not opened something neither of us was ready to name. Then Frank's phone buzzed. He read the message, and the softness vanished. They found the second suspect's jacket near the train in trance, he said. Your ID was not in it. So he still has it. Yes. And my address. Frank did not answer quickly enough. My pulse kicked. Captain. He met my eyes. I'm not letting you go home alone tonight. The word should have made me angry. Maybe part of me was angry. But another part remembered the wall, the accidental touch, the way his hand had lifted as if he knew exactly how dangerous 1 second could become. I folded my arms. You always this charming with witnesses? Only the difficult ones. Lucky me. Frank picked up my wallet and held it out. This time, when I reached for it, his fingers brushed mine. Neither of us moved right away. The contact was small. Barely anything. Still, his voice lowered when he spoke. Let me do my job, Bill. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Serious. Stubborn. Too controlled. Too handsome for my peace of mind. Fine, I said. But no more walls. His eyes held mine. No more walls. It sounded like a promise. I believed it just enough to be afraid. Frank did not take me to my apartment that night. He drove me there, let me pack one bag, then stood in the hallway while I argued with him for 8 solid minutes about whether I needed protection. He said the man has my ID. I told him, shoving clothes into a duffel. That does not automatically mean he is coming for me. Frank stood near the door, arms crossed, eyes moving between the window, the hallway, and me. He stole your identification after you saw his face. That is not random. It could be a warning. That is worse. I'm trying to make this sound less dramatic. You are failing. I threw a pair of socks into the bag harder than necessary. You always this impossible. Yes. At least you're honest. Only when it annoys people. I wanted to laugh. I did not give him the satisfaction. He took me to a police residential building 2 streets behind the station. It was not glamorous. Plain walls, tight parking, fluorescent hallways. The kind of place built for function and not comfort. The apartment he gave me had a couch, a narrow bed, a kitchen that looked untouched, and a window facing the back of another building. Charming, I said. It is secure. I've stayed in motel rooms with more personality. Were they bulletproof? I looked at him. You really know how to sell a vacation. Frank placed my bag on the floor. You stay here until we find the second suspect. I will have patrols check the building. Do not open the door for anyone who is not me or an officer I personally name. Are you going to leave me a rule book too? He looked around the apartment. Would you read it? No. Then I will save the paper. That almost got me. Almost. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. There is food in the fridge. I opened it. A bottle of water, half a jar of mustard, and something in a container that looked like it had lost the will to live. I looked back at him. This is not food. This is evidence. Frank's face stayed serious for 2 seconds before the corner of his mouth betrayed him. There was again that little crack in the armor. Small, brief, dangerous. Fine, he said. I will order something. You cook. I survive. That is not an answer. It is the most accurate answer. 20 minutes later, we sat at the small kitchen table eating noodles from paper cartons. Frank stayed near the chair closest to the door. I noticed that. He noticed me noticing. It is habit, he said. Do you ever stop being a cop? His chopsticks paused. Not often. That sounds lonely. He did not answer right away. It is useful. Those are not the same thing. His eyes lifted to mine, guarded but not cold. For a moment, the apartment felt smaller than it was. I wanted to ask something honest. He looked like he might answer. Then his phone buzzed, and whatever had been there disappeared behind duty. They found a name, he said after reading the message. The suspect is linked to a crew working the waterfront. Pickpocketing, card theft, intimidation. Nothing large enough to make headlines, but organized. So I got lucky. You got noticed. Again, he said it like something he could not stand. The next 2 days were strange. I was not locked in, but I was not exactly free either. Frank came by in the morning before his shift and again after dark. Sometimes he brought updates. Sometimes food. Once he brought coffee so bitter it tasted like a personal attack. You drink this willingly? I asked. It keeps me alert. It keeps your soul from entering your body. He took the cup from me, tasted it, and frowned. It is not that bad. Frank, that coffee could question suspects. I got a real laugh out of him. Low surprise, gone too soon. I held on to the sound longer than I should have. On the third morning, he showed up with a retired police dog named Duke. Duke was a broad, gray-muzzled German shepherd with one floppy ear and the suspicious stare of an old detective. Frank held the leash tight. He is staying with you during the day, Frank said. You assign me a furry officer? He is trained. Duke sniffed my boot, circled once, then leaned his entire weight against my leg. Frank stared. He does not usually do that. Maybe he has better judgment than you. Duke huffed like he agreed. Frank looked offended. He is retired, not blind. That was how Duke became my shadow. He followed me from the couch to the kitchen, from the kitchen to the window, from the window back to the couch. When Frank stopped by that evening, Duke shoved himself between us like a jealous roommate, then somehow pushed Frank's knee against mine under the table. I looked down. Your dog is not subtle. He takes after no one I know. That sounded defensive. It was. The danger outside had not gone away, but inside that plain little apartment, something softer began to grow. Frank stopped, standing only by the door. He sat across from me, then beside me. He still checked the locks twice, but he also noticed when I rubbed my shoulder and asked if it hurt. It is fine, I said. He did not believe me. Sit still. I love when people give me orders in my temporary prison. It is not a prison. You gave me a guard dog. He likes you. That makes one of you. Frank opened the first aid kit without looking at me. You think I do not? The question landed too quietly to dodge. I sat on the edge of the bed while he cleaned the scrape on my shoulder from the market fight. His fingers were careful. Warm. Nothing like that night against the glass, and somehow harder to ignore. He worked with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. You can breathe, I said. I am breathing. Not convincingly. His eyes flicked up. You talk too much when you're nervous. You patch people up like you're afraid they will break. His hand stilled. Then he pressed the bandage down and stepped back. Some people do. I wanted to ask who had broken in front of him. I wanted to ask why he looked like he carried every loss in silence. Instead, Duke chose that moment to jump onto the bed and knock his head into my ribs. I groaned. Frank caught my arm to steady me. His grip was firm. His thumb rested near my pulse. Neither of us moved. Then someone knocked on the door. Frank changed instantly. He pulled me behind him with one arm and drew his weapon with the other. Bathroom, he whispered. I can help. Bill. One word. No argument in it. I moved, but not far. Through the crack near the hallway, I watched him approach the door. Another knock. Then a voice. Delivery. Frank looked through the peephole, then went still. The door burst inward before he could step back. A man in a courier jacket lunged in with a knife. Frank caught his wrist, slammed him into the wall, and the apartment exploded into movement. Duke barked hard enough to shake the floor. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a metal chair, and swung it into the attacker's legs. He went down. Frank kicked the knife away and cuffed him in seconds. More officers rushed in from the hall. The whole thing lasted less than a minute. My hands were still shaking when it ended. Frank turned to me, fury and fear fighting across his face. I told you to stay back. You were welcome. He had a knife, and you had your back turned. His anger cracked. What remained underneath was worse. He crossed the room and caught my shoulders, checking me fast. My arms, my face, my ribs. Are you hurt? No. Bill. I said no. His hand stayed on me. His breathing was uneven. Mine was not much better. For a second, I thought he might pull away. Instead, he rested his forehead against mine. It was not a kiss. Not even close. But it felt more intimate than anything that had happened between us. I cannot protect you if you keep running toward danger, he said. I closed my eyes. Then stop making danger look like you. He drew back just enough to look at me. The room was full of officers, noise, Duke barking, radios crackling. Still, Frank looked at me like none of it mattered. Then one of the officers cleared his throat. Captain. Frank stepped back, but his hand brushed mine before he let go. The attacker was dragged out. The knife was bagged. Someone said the waterfront crew now knew where I was staying. Frank's face hardened. Then we move him tonight. To where? I asked. He looked at me, and I knew before he said it that the line between duty and something personal had already been crossed. My place. Frank's place was nothing like the apartment he had put me in. I expected cold furniture, bare walls, maybe a fridge full of black coffee, and regret. Instead, his house sat on a quiet street above the harbor, small but solid, with clean floors, heavy curtains, and framed photos turned slightly away from the room as if he did not like being watched by his own memories. Duke ran in ahead of us like he owned the place, which, judging by the blanket on the couch and the chewed tennis ball near the hallway, he probably did. You live here alone? I asked, setting my duffel by the door. Frank locked the deadbolt, checked the window, then looked at me. Most of the time. That sounds like yes with extra sadness. That sounds like you judging my interior design. I am judging the emotional temperature. The couch looks like it apologizes before anyone sits on it. Duke jumped onto it immediately and stretched out. Frank sighed. He's not allowed up there. He looks devastated by your rules. Everyone does. The line should not have made me smile, but it did. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way his house, for all its order, felt safer than anywhere I had been since stepping into Harbor City. Or maybe it was Frank himself, standing near the door with his duty weapon locked away and his sleeves rolled up, trying very hard not to look like a man who had nearly lost control when I was almost stabbed. He showed me the guest room, then the bathroom, then the back exit. Always practical, always careful. But when he handed me a clean towel, his fingers brushed mine and both of us paused like fools. Shower, he said, voice rougher than before. You have dried blood on your arm. Very romantic. It is not meant to be. Shame. His eyes held mine for half a second too long. Then he stepped back. Bathroom is on the left. By the time I came out, he had changed into a dark t-shirt and sweatpants. The uniform was gone, but the man underneath was somehow worse for my peace of mind. Broader, quieter, less guarded in the shoulders, more guarded in the eyes. He stood at the kitchen counter making tea with the focus of someone handling evidence. I did not picture you as a tea guy, I said. I am not. You looked cold. Something in my chest shifted. I took the mug. Thank you. He nodded like gratitude made him uncomfortable. You could take the guest room. I will sleep on the couch. Your dog has already claimed the couch. Then I will sleep on the floor. Frank. He looked at me. You got attacked tonight too. I have had worse. So have I. That does not make it a hobby. His mouth tightened, not annoyed exactly. More like he had run out of ways to refuse care. I sat at the table and pointed to the chair across from me. Sit down before I start making officer jokes again. He sat. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The house creaked. Duke snored from the couch. Somewhere outside, a car passed and vanished down the hill. The quiet was not empty. It was crowded with things both of us were avoiding. Finally, Frank said, "I should have moved you sooner. You did not send the man with a knife." "No, but I underestimated them, and I ignored your instructions." "That too." I looked at him over the rim of my mug. "You sound relieved to blame me a little. It helps." There he is, Captain Sunshine. His lips moved. Not quite a smile, but enough. Then he looked down at his hands. Strong hands. Careful hands. The same ones that had pinned me to glass, patched my shoulder, pulled me behind him, and trembled slightly when checking me for wounds. "I was scared," he said. The honesty landed heavier than any command. I set the mug down. "Tonight, at the apartment, when he came through the door, when you stepped in instead of staying back." His jaw flexed. "I know you can handle yourself. That is not the point." "What is the point?" His eyes lifted. "I cannot decide whether I want to protect you because you are a witness or because the thought of something happening to you makes me feel like I cannot breathe." The room went still. I had plenty of jokes ready. None of them survived that. "Frank," I said quietly. He stood too fast. "Forget I said that." "No, I should not have." "No," I repeated, standing too. "Do not do that. Do not say something real and then hide behind the nearest rule." He stopped near the sink, back half turned to me. "Rules are easier. Lonelier too." His shoulders rose with a slow breath. I stepped closer, leaving enough space between us for him to choose. "You asked me to trust you. That goes both ways." He turned then. Without the uniform, without the captain's tone, he looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Wanting something without controlling the distance." That was the most honest thing he had said to me. I leaned against the counter beside him. "Then start small." His gaze moved to my face. "How small?" "Stop acting like touching my hand will cause a city-wide emergency." A quiet breath left him. Almost a laugh. Almost a confession. Slowly, he reached down and took my hand. Nothing dramatic happened. No music. No grand speech. Just his palm against mine, warm and steady, and the strange relief of a thing both of us had been circling finally becoming simple. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. "This okay?" The question hit deeper than it should have. "Yes," I said. "That is okay." He nodded once, but he did not let go. For a while, we stood like that in his kitchen, hand in hand, two grown men acting like teenagers because something gentle had become more terrifying than danger. Then his phone rang. Frank glanced at the screen, and his face changed. "Sullivan." I watched the captain return in real time. His posture sharpened. His voice dropped. He listened, asked 3 short questions, then ended the call. "They found the cruise base," he said. "Old storage office near Dock 6. They are moving before sunrise. So go. You are staying here." "Obviously. I mean it, Bill." "I know." He searched my face, maybe expecting a fight. I was learning. Not every battle needed my name on it. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes to guard the house. Frank left after giving me more instructions than a hospital discharge sheet. "Lock the door. Stay away from windows. Do not answer unknown calls. Let Duke bark before opening anything. If anything feels wrong, call him first, then 911, because apparently even emergency services had to stand behind Frank Sullivan in line." Before he stepped out, he turned back. I expected another warning. Instead, he said, "I will come back." It sounded less like information and more like something he needed me to believe. "You better," I said. "Your dog likes me, but he is terrible conversation." Duke barked once from the couch. Frank looked at him. Traitor. Then he was gone. The next 2 hours felt longer than the whole night before. I sat with Duke pressed against my leg and tried not to imagine every possible way things could go wrong. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Frank. "We have them." I let out a breath I had been holding for too long. Then another message came. "I'm okay." That one did more damage. By dawn, Frank came through the front door with a bruise along his cheekbone and a cut near his eyebrow. I was halfway across the room before I remembered to be angry. "You said you were okay." "I am." "You look like someone used your face to stop a door." "It was a shelf." "That does not make it better." He shut the door behind him. "The crew is in custody." The man who took your ID confessed to marking witnesses. Your name is cleared from their list. So, it is over? Yes. I should have felt only relief. Instead, something colder moved through me. If the case was over, then the reason for staying in Frank's house was over too. The excuse was gone. All that remained was the thing neither of us could file in a report. Frank seemed to understand at the same time I did. You can go home today, he said. I nodded. Right. His face closed down a little. I will have an officer drive you. Very professional. That is what I'm trying to be. And how is that working for you? He did not answer. I stepped closer. Frank. His eyes met mine, tired and dark, and full of everything he kept refusing to touch. Bill, if you leave now, I will let you. No pressure. No guilt. No badge. Whatever this is, it has to be your choice. That was the line that broke me open. Because he meant it. Not a tactic. Not a command. Just a man standing in his own kitchen, bruised and exhausted, offering me the door because he cared more about my freedom than his fear. I reached up and touched the cut near his eyebrow. He went still. You are bleeding again, I said. I know. You are bad at being okay. You are bad at staying out of danger. We all have gifts. His hand rose but stopped before touching my waist. Waiting. I looked down at it, then back at him. You can touch me, Frank. He moved slowly, like the permission mattered. His hand settled at my side, warm and careful. I stepped closer until there was almost no space left between us. Ask me, I said. His voice lowered. Can I kiss you? Yes. The kiss was not rushed. It was not a mistake dressed as impulse. Frank leaned in like a man entering a room he had been afraid to open, and when his mouth touched mine, all the noise in my head finally went quiet. His hand tightened at my waist, not to hold me in place, but to make sure I knew he was there. I kissed him back with both hands gripping his shirt, pulling him closer because I wanted to, because the choice was mine, because the safest place in the room had somehow become his arms. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I have wanted to do that since the wall, he admitted. I smiled. Your technique has improved. He laughed then, soft and real, and I felt it against my chest. A month later, I still had my apartment, but I spent more nights at Frank's than either of us bothered pretending was casual. Duke stopped acting surprised when I showed up. The officers at the station stopped calling me wall guy and started calling me Frank's emergency contact, which was worse and somehow better. Harbor City did not become simple. Frank still worked too much. I still ran toward trouble when common sense recommended walking. We argued about coffee, couch rules, and whether burnt toast counted as breakfast. But every morning I stayed over. I watched him button his uniform in the hallway mirror, and sometimes he let me straighten his badge. One morning, he caught my wrist before I could step away and kiss my palm. You know, he said, when I met you, I thought you were a suspect. I looked at Duke, who sat by the door, judging both of us. Your investigative skills were questionable. Frank smiled. I improved. You did. He leaned in and kissed me once, slow enough to make leaving difficult. Outside, the city was already awake. Inside, for one more quiet second, it was just us. No wall between us. No case. No excuse. Just Frank's hand in mine, and a life I had not come to Harbor City looking for, but somehow found anyway. And that was how Bill and Frank found each other. Not through perfect timing, but through chaos, fear, courage, and a choice neither of them expected to make. In the end, love did not erase the danger behind them. It simply gave them something stronger to walk toward. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.